So Eric, please start, and this is our partner from ExtraHop, and we will demonstrate the product and talk about ransomware.
Cool, thank you. I couldn't understand everything from the introduction, most of it not, but thank you for inviting me. Everybody can hear me, right? So, can you? Yeah, you should.
Yeah, Eric, I can hear it, and
cool.
Hope that others also can hear.
So, what I want to talk to you about is today about ransomware and supply chain attacks and how they're getting worse, and if you're ready for that. And what I want to do is first off start off with a presentation, and later on give you a demo of the solution that I want to present to you. Now, to start off, you really want to identify why do companies still get hacked and why are hackers so successful? Because you all see the news, right? And for some reason, even though there's a lot of security tools out there, companies still get hacked. Now, the risk they are facing, I don't know if so the risk they're facing is now a clever ransomware. They call it the double extortion. I'll show you how that works later on, but it really means not only the files are encrypted, but also exfiltrated, which makes it really hard not to pay any money to the hackers. The growing 0 days problem with that is that legacy tools that really look at signatures will miss these because they don't know about these kind of attacks. And the supply chain attacks, which they get into your environment by trusted tools, trusted solutions, and really there's no tool that is really able to detect that when you look at the way we normally protect our environment. Now, how do companies normally protect their environment? Most companies will protect the perimeter, which is fine, right? It's nothing wrong with that, and you need to do that. You have the firewall, you have IPS, IDS, and then you have your sandboxing solution, really preventing anything from coming in. Now, unfortunately, this is no 100% guarantee that they won't get in, as you have seen in the news all too often. The problem here is that they'll find vulnerabilities in your server, in users that click on the wrong things on the internet, they get into your environment, or just leave a used big stick in your parking lot. Somebody will pick it up, puts it in their desktop or laptop, and via that way they get in. Now, why am I telling you this? Because at the moment, the hackers inside of your environment. So here you see the perimeter, that east-west corridor. So inside of your organization, there are no tools that really look at what's happening. So they're free to really do what they want, these hackers. And that's the whole problem. Now you see these 56 days dwell time. That's the time that a hacker normally is at an average in your environment. This is a US number. In EMEA, in Europe, this number is unfortunately higher, meaning hackers are longer in your environment. Now, why would they be in your environment longer? Because nowadays, they take their time to really get to the resources that do a lot of pain to the organization, like privacy sensitive data, corporate data, all these kind of things they want to get so they can actually earn their money, right? The only thing they care about is money. Or it's a political thing, or I don't know, somebody has a grudge against you, but most of the time it's really about money. And you would say, well, probably we have some tools that detect that, but hackers like to be unnoticed in their environment, right? In your environment, sorry. So the destruction of logs. So if you have a scene, for instance, they really don't want you to see what they're doing there, so they'll disable logs or destroy them. Actually, we're coming to this following point, right? So how do you now get visibility in that perimeter, within that perimeter? The only way to do that, according to Gartner, is to use this SOC visibility triad, which consists of a scene, a EDR, and an NDR solution. Now, when you look at scene, and I already told you that in the earlier slide, it relies on logs, right? And like I said, first thing a hacker will do is disable logs. It will manipulate the logs so you don't really know what's going on. Or, there are no logs enabled on this device. And that's really, hackers try to pick the devices in your environment where they can get into your environment unnoticed. Now, there also is these EDR series, right? So I'm not saying, by the way, that you shouldn't use C. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are, it's not a 100% guarantee that a C will cover everything. The same goes with the EDR. Now, EDR is much better because it runs on the endpoint. It's harder to disable, but still, if I get access to your domain, or do a spear phishing attack against your administrator, I'm able to disable this EDR. Now, the EDR itself is much better than C when it comes to disabling it. So it gives you a better protection. With both of these systems, there are some issues with certain devices, like an IoT device, with, for instance, medical IoT device when it comes to a hospital. Let's say you have an MRI scanner. Are you able to install a EDR agent on it? No. Are you able to get logging? No, at least not from a security point of view. So there's some issues with certain devices where you just cannot get visibility on. Now, guess what kind of targets the hacker is looking for? These kind of devices, right? So they can roam freely within your organization. Now, NDR takes the source for detecting malicious activity from the network, meaning we take a copy of the network traffic, start analyzing that, and looking at what kind of behavior a hacker is doing, right? Only malicious behavior. The advantage of this is that we're not in line, meaning a hacker is not able to see us. We take a copy of the network traffic. We can do this by a span port or tab, or in the cloud in a virtual tab. We take a copy. So for a hacker, it's really difficult to evade network detection and response. And the product that we have is called Reveal X, what I'll show you a demo for later on. But it's really hard for them to evade it. Now, keep in mind that I told you, seeing logs and EDR, they try to disable that. Now, would you think that a hacker will disable the network? No, it needs a network to attack. So it's not going to disable the network. It doesn't know that we're looking what he's doing, and it's the closest thing to the truth he can get to. The reason is the protocols that are used by the hacker, he cannot manipulate them in the sense of now all of a sudden, it's you doing something different. No, a protocol is a protocol. It needs to conform to how this protocol works. Okay, now let's use ransomware as an example. If you look at ransomware, right, and this is still unfortunately a big issue to a lot of organizations, especially now with a double extortion. This is a ransomware example with double extortion. I'll go through the steps that a hacker takes. What ReviewX will detect on is this area here. But like I said, I'll go through the steps. So the first thing a hacker needs is access to your environment, because it doesn't start with encryption of files. It starts off with him or she having access to your environment. That means it gets access to a laptop, a server, and from there starts. Now, keep in mind, this hacker, right? He or she is on the internet, and he gets access to, or he or she gets access to this environment. This person is now doing a high five to him or herself, saying, "Yeah, I have access to this environment. Great, great." But now what, right? So the first thing he wants to do is actually make sure that this connection he or she has is persistent. So there's some sort of command and control session that's being set up, because it doesn't want to lose this environment, because he needs to go through the steps to actually do his harm. So that's the first thing that happens. Now, ReviewX with NDR is able to detect on that. You would say, wouldn't my firewall detect on that? No, because it's a session that starts from inside to outside, and this is allowed by your firewall. It's not going to stop it, else you're not able to connect to the internet. So it is a real problem that you're not able to detect these kind of things. We're able to detect this because of the machine learning we use, and a lot of companies say that they're using machine learning. The reason why we are better at it than other companies is that you need two things. One is really good algorithms. We got these, and we won prizes for these. But the other thing, even more important, is you need to have a lot of data. This is why Google is so good in doing machine learning. They just got a ton of data. Now imagine what is going over the network all day long. It's a ton of data. So that's why we're really good in detecting these kind of things. Okay, so the command and control session is set up. Great, right? What now? Okay, he wants to, or he or she wants to get to your privacy sensitive information, but there's an issue because this person doesn't know your environment. So the first thing it needs to do is actually do some recon. It's the next step. Recon doing an IP scan or a TCP SYN scan, really investigating what do I need to target to get to my goal. Then it finds the goal, it does lateral movement. From there, maybe some data staging. As you can see here, we have a detection of Ciphers data staging where this person is now gathering all the information to make it ready for the next step. Now, what I've told you until now is all the beginning steps, right? So here, that's first exploit or that worm, whatever it used to get in, that's actually where you would use an EDR or a SIEM for to really detect that part. But now if that misses it, this is the thing that is hard for other tools to detect. So from that point on, you really need an NDR tool to detect this. Now, if you detect it here, you're able to stop it. Meaning, it might not be that sexy. It might not, get into the news that you've been hacked, but you would actually have stopped that attack from causing its harm, what it's now going to do. And I'll show you what are the next steps. So here, the hacker now exfiltrates the data. You're too late, really. Too late at this point because now the hacker has your files. And we get a detection on NDR, and it's nice to see because now you can go back and see, okay, what did he or she exfiltrate? But really, stopping it here makes you, prevent this from happening. Now, the next step, you get an email because he or she now encrypts your files. Really too late, right? Because now you notice that you're not able to access files anymore. You get an email saying you need to pay up because else, you cannot access your files. But now you say, haha, hang on, I have a backup. So I don't care, I'm not going to pay you. I'll just put back my backup and I can access my files again. Now the hacker says, no, wait, you don't understand me. I encrypted your files, but I also have your files. So you need to pay up because if you don't pay, I'm going to sell this privacy sensitive information or corporate data to the highest bidder on the internet. Now, the easiest way for him or she is that you just pay because then he doesn't have to go to the hassle to pay, sell it on the internet. But anyway, this person gets paid whichever way it goes, right? If you pay or the internet, somebody on the internet pays, he gets or she gets the money. Now, the reason why this is such a nasty way of ransomware is that as soon as your data is exfiltrated, there's really nothing that you can do anymore. And, you're really being held hostage in that sense. Okay, so the whole point about this is detecting things in the early stages. How do we do this? We, with ExtraHop, with ReviewX, can analyze and understand 75 plus protocols. Now you might say, yeah, Rick, that's nice. We only use 20, so why should I care about all the other protocols? Well, guess how many protocols hackers are going to use? They're not going to stop at the 20 protocols you use. They're going to use all the protocols to their advantage to actually be able to get to their goal. So being able to understand these protocols is key to be able to detect the attacker in your environment. And when I say that we understand these protocols, it means from layer 2 to layer 7, really looking inside of it, and I'll show you that in a demo later on, but really looking inside of it to understand, yes, it looks like HTTP data because it's port 443, or port 80 or database traffic, but really looking inside of it to understand what is going on to say, hey, there's some cross-site scripting or SQL injection. You're only able to see that if you look inside of it. I said something just now, HTTPS, right? You might say, yeah, but my data is encrypted, so how are you able to look inside of it? Well, there's two ways, right? We can still detect unencrypted data, saying, well, we see strange things going on, inform you about things that you should really look at, but we can also decrypt that data. Now, decrypting the data will again give you more visibility. You're able to see that cross-site shifting and SQL injection because we're able to look inside of the traffic. So being able to decrypt the data is really a strong point of ReviewX and gives you back the visibility that you don't have when all the data is encrypted. Now we can decrypt that when you give us the private key or when it's TLS 1.3, the perfect word secret. But just know we're able to decrypt that. We'll keep a record of 90 days of lookback time, the data you have, and we scale on from 1 to 100 gigabits per second. But what we need is a sensor on the location. So if it's a remote location, your corporate location, your head office or your data center, or if it's in the cloud, Google, AWS or Azure, it really doesn't matter. We need a copy of the network traffic. In the cloud, it's a virtual tab. On-premise, it can be a feed from VMware, or it can be a feed from your core switch, which is a spam port, or a tab aggregator. The whole point is we need a copy of the network traffic, and then we start analyzing it. The machine learning will detect based on signatures, but most of all based on behavior. Because when we're talking about supply chain attacks and ransomware, is really being able to detect the unknown, like the 0 days I was talking about. It's being able to detect these kind of things that really matter. Okay, there's one more thing, by the way. When you do get a detection, and it's called network detection and response, the category, the response part can be two things. And keep in mind, this is a post-compromise tool. So it looks at all the things and it detects malicious behavior. When we detect it, there can be two ways of responding. One is by us giving you all the information in the detection card to actually respond, right? To understand what is going on. The other one is via our APIs, integrations with a firewall, a AAA server or a EDR agent. Let's say you see an IP address from the internet, you can directly block that on the firewall by our integration. So it's automated. The whole point about this solution is to give you real-time detections. Then when you have the detection, forensic level of investigation, so you actually can investigate it. It's not just giving you the detection and good luck. No, we give you all information to actually decide what is going on. And then the intelligence response, taking action yourself or automatically doing that. So this is just one slide for me to know that the next slide is actually going to be demo time. So let's get into the demo. Let's see. I'll close this one. So this is our demo environment. Let me see if I don't have a lot of cache. No, it's still working. So this is the main page. I mean, wait until it's loaded. Yeah, you can see it. This is just the dashboard showing you, how this environment looks and if everything is still safe. We see, the categories, so recon, exploit, the top offenders. We see the top detections. Also get the threat briefing, meaning when we see something on the internet or in the world, what is going on when SolarWinds happens or Sunburst happens or any other kind of attack, we'll give you an update. This is something you really need to look at, and when that happens, and this is a little bit outdated because this is our demo environment, and we don't want to give our competitors too much information. But if you have a live environment of our system, this will be up to date. But if you click on it, it will now tell you, this is how this threat works. This is how this, somebody might take advantage of this. And we've seen this 0 times or a couple of times in your environment. So directly giving you information about this attack and then showing you the risk of your environment. Now, what I want to do with this demo is really, first of all, start off with what kind of data do we have in this product. Then, if we've done that, move on to detections, and I'll show you how we use that data to give you detections. And then the third part of this demo is going to be more on the security hygiene. Not really the text, but really, what kind of things do we see where you can elevate your security on. So let's move to the assets part. So the first thing that happens when we get that copy of the network traffic is we start auto-discovering all the devices. Now, this alone, from a security point of view, is really valuable because now we exactly know what kind of devices you have on the network. So here we see the active devices. If I click on it, it gives me a complete list of all the devices. I can actually download, that content as a file, or I can integrate, for instance, via the API to a ServiceNow or whatever kind of CMDB solution you have to update this information so the CMDB is up to date. The second thing that we'll do with this product is, and by the way, everything that I'm showing you here is all done automatically. So you don't have to tell us, what kind of protocols, what kind of service you have. By looking at the network traffic, we're able to get that information. So the second thing that happens is we will auto-discover all the protocols on your network. So here we see the protocols. For instance, for Ciphers, we see that there's 18 servers, 84 clients, database traffic, 7 servers, 12 clients. So for all these protocols that we support, we'll give you that information. Now, one of the cool things about this is that with this icon here, when I click on it, it takes me to, in this case, an overview of all the Ciphers activity. So here I see the server. I can also see the clients it's connecting to. So it helps me to create a map of this environment. This map is handy because the middle one, you see there's a blue halo around it. And we also see a client with a red halo around it. That means this is the attacker and the blue one is a victim. Why this is handy is because now I also know from a Ciphers perspective what other Ciphers clients there are, which I might need to investigate in this case, right? If I go back one step, so what I've showed you is just on a protocol level. We can also do this later on a client protocol, client level, but I'll show you it later. We can do this for every protocol that we have here. Another thing we'll do is categorize devices by their main role. What are they doing on the network? So we have 7 domain controllers, 13 file servers. I have some database servers here. When I click on these database servers, it takes me to a list of all the database servers. So here we see the list. Now we see one client here that has a crown in front of it. Again, this is done automatically. We automatically discover that this device is a high value device for your environment. The reason is, if this device would fail, a lot of other clients would have an issue with that. That might be important for if this device is hacked or compromised, that you know what the impact can be. And let's now say I'm interested in this MySQL 1 server, the top one. I click on it, and then I can say, go to the device. Now here we're looking at this MySQL server. We have an overview here, what kind of protocols I'm using. But one of the things that I said to you, I can actually see for this device as well what its peer devices are. So if I click on it, I now have a map of its dependencies. This can be handy in 2 ways. One, security-wise, right? I know what it's communicating to. The other thing is when I need to move this device for a change, or I need to migrate it to the cloud, I know exactly what its dependencies are. I can even, if you see on the top left here, change the time frame. I'm now looking at the time frame from 2 o'clock to 7:25. That's because that works the best in this demo environment. But I can change that. I can change it to 1 hour. I can change it to 5 days. I can actually change it to whatever time I want, or use a custom time like I did here. Choose different days. The whole point is that you're able to see from a longer point in time what the dependencies are. I can even compare, saying, well, I want to see the last day compared to ending 7 days ago. So if I now all of a sudden have an issue, or if I see strange things in my environment, I can compare this data and see if there's any changes. Now, this is a demo environment, so we don't have a lot of history here, so I cannot really compare a lot of data here. But you are able to do that in a live environment where you're just constantly looking at this data. The environment that by the way looking at, if you go to the ExtraHop.com website, in the top right corner, there's a tour or demo button. If you click on it, you can access the same environment I'm looking at here. So if you want to look at this later on, you're able to do that. Now, I was looking at this device because I was interested in this device. You would expect, because we take a copy of the network traffic, that this is something you would typically see, because network throughput, right? What is the throughput that is sending in and out? But one of the cool things about it is that I told you already that we analyze traffic from layer 2 to layer 7. So now let's go to the database activity. This is why I was looking at this device, because it was a database server. And actually for this device itself, we can see that it's also a AAA server and an NFF server and an SSH server. And from a client perspective, it's a DHCP server. So I get all this information by just looking at the data that goes over the wire. Now the layer 7 protocol, this layer 7 of the OSI model, what I was talking about is seen here. I can actually see the transactions for this database activity. I can also see the errors here. When I click on the errors, I can actually go to the errors, and it shows me what kind of errors I have in this environment. This helps me to identify what is going on. I can also see what database has been this error is on. A lot of information to just go over. Now everything you're seeing here is what we call metrics, summarized data. I can also see the performance, and keep in mind, ExtraHop came from the network traffic analysis part of the business. We moved to the security environment because a lot of our customers were using our product already for a security solution, even though it wasn't at that time. It's been a security solution for around 5 years already, or 6 years. We only focus really on the security part of it nowadays, but the underlying network traffic analysis part is still in here. It's the basis on why we are able to detect and understand all these protocols. So that's why you see the performance, right? Server processing time, response times, but also when it comes to this protocol, what the methods are, the top methods by detail. I see the top users, a lot of information here that you can use to analyze this device. Now, these are metrics. This is what we use for machine learning to actually be able to get detections. Now, if I want to go a little bit deeper, this ExtraHop user, the EH user we have here, if I click on it, I can go to records. We are now in the assets page, really the metrics page. If I go to click on records, we now move over to the records page. We already see here that we have a filter already created for us, MySQL1 and the EH user, because I clicked on it. I now can see all the transactions. So all the transactions that go back and forth on this environment, I can analyze. So I see the timestamp, I see its database activity, but you can see we can do this for all these protocols, just analyzing it and looking at the transactions. I can see the client, I can see the client IP address, the client port. I can see the same for the server side. I can see the method that is being used, the database that is being looked up, but also the statement that is being made at that point. I can add more filters, or maybe I want to know, is this the only client that is accessing this server? Now, I can scroll to this list. It takes a lot of time. So what I can do here is group by clients. And now it's going to look at the data and say, okay, I see two devices, unique devices, that wasn't looking at. Unique devices that are connecting to this. Okay, cool. Interesting for me to know. But I'm interested in this client alone. So I can click on it, I say equals as, and now I create an extra filter. Or maybe I want to see for this statement, is this client making this statement once or more often? I can click on it and say, or is it equals as, and now I've created another filter. Well, it's doing that quite often actually. So it really helps you to go through the data, analyze it, and this is really cool for threat hunters. Threat hunters love this. Now, this is not something you need to look at daily, and I'll show you that in the detections. This is not something you need to go through to actually be able to detect things. But for a threat hunter that is searching for certain things, or for post-compromise, when you really want to go and see, okay, what happened, and analyze everything. This is awesome. And we have a history of 90 days. So whatever happens in these 90 days, you're able to analyze it. I can remove these records again, but let's say you want to even go deeper. And by the way, you see these extra filters that we automatically create for you if you want to use them. But let's say I want to even go deeper, right? Now, these records, most of the time, is enough for our customers. But sometimes for compliance reasons, or just because somebody wants that, you can click on this icon here for this transaction, and it takes you to the raw packets. So these are the raw packets that go over the wire for the transaction that we were just looking at. I can download that as a PCAP file to analyze it offline. This is the data we have to be able to do detections. Okay, now let's move over to detections. I already showed you how ransomware works, and now let's use one of the supply chain attacks that have happened. Like we had SolarWinds, Sunburst breach. We had Kaseya. I have an example for the Sunburst breach here. I'll zoom in a little bit. So what you see here is, with a detection, and you see that down here. You see that we have detections here, and they also have their risk score. This is the score that we give it, so you understand which ones should I look at first, in the sense of what is the most important, what is the most risky detection that is out here. Now the Sunburst detection is pretty obvious. I mean, this was a attack that if you were hit, you needed to fix it really fast, because this was a real big issue. So here we see the detection cards. So we get a 94 risk score. We see that this is a command and control detection. We see the time that it happened. We get a little bit of an explanation, what happened here. Really saying we see an offender and we see a victim. And the SolarWinds server, in this sense, looks a little bit strange, but it's the victim. And it started off here. But the SolarWinds server is the victim because it's now, hang on, I'll show you why it's the victim. Let me just go into the detection card. That's easier. Now, why is this SolarWinds server the victim? It's actually, yes, I need to scroll down a little bit. It's the victim because it's looking for these query names, meaning it has been compromised. It's the victim to an attack. And the reason why we hit on this is because this signature, this domain was used during the Sunburst breach. Now, like I said before, detecting the things that's nice. It's about detecting the unknown. Now, the reason we're able to detect this is because we now know about the Sunburst breach. But the customers that we have that have and SolarWinds and ReviewX were able to stop the Sunburst breach. Why? Because they saw strange behavior. They didn't know about Sunburst. They didn't know about what the SolarWinds server that was compromised, but they saw strange things happening from the SolarWinds server. And I'll actually show you what kind of things they saw. And they were actually able to mitigate that issue by, just disabling the SolarWinds server, or blocking some domains, or blocking something in the internet for the SolarWinds server to be able to reach out to the internet. Now, this detection is pretty obvious, right? It's a signature-based detection. Now let's just forget this detection. Let's say that we wouldn't detect that, right? You probably would have had something like this, a command and control session that we saw, right? It's now going to a domain and it keeps on a connection. In this case, it's a Cobalt Strike, and I can actually, hang on, I can click on it. And now we move over. And by the way, why this is so important that we see here, the related detection, is because we automatically correlate all these detections so you know what the timeline is. So you see the starting of a attack and you see where it leads. Now, when I clicked on this Cobalt Strike attack, it now gives me the information for this detection. And in this case, it's the SolarWinds server that is reaching out via command and control session to the internet. This is something you don't want, because this, again, is the early stages of the detection. What we could do with for instance, our APIs is directly block this IP address from being able to get to this SolarWinds server. What we have down here is the record. So this is what I showed you. All the data we have here, we automatically populate this in this detection. But we also give you a background. So if you don't know what this attack means, right, we'll give you the background of how does this attack work? You know, what are the mitigation options, and how does it link to the MITRE ATT&CK framework? And it can also, in this case, there's some GitHub, some other references, but it also references OWASP or CVEs if that's applicable. Okay, so now this hacker has access to this environment, right, via the command and control session. We didn't know about some burst. We only saw our SolarWinds server at this point doing something strange. And this can be with a future Sunburst breach, right? It can be like the Xay attack we had. It can be something that happens now with a trusted solution you have in your environment. If somebody now is able to compromise that source code, you update that server, now all of a sudden you have compromised code in that system. No other tool is gonna detect that. And actually you'll see why, because this SolarWinds server, when that happened, one of the things that SolarWinds said, don't install an EDR agent on it because it's gonna conflict with the SolarWinds services. So this server was a great example of nobody had visibility on it, but it started doing strange things like the command and control. Then it started doing a DC sync attack. And this, again, the Cobalt Strike, again, is a signature-based detection. But we can also detect DNS tunnels, HTTP tunnels, any kind of tunneling protocol based on machine learning. And I'll show you some machine learning here. So this DC sync attack is a good example of how the machine learning works. So the machine learning looks at your environment and starts understanding what is normal. Here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, here you see that this SolarWinds server is now targeting this Windows server. And in this case, it's a DC sync attack. Now, a DC sync is normally used by your domain controllers to just sync, right? To just make sure that both of your domain controllers are in sync. So this is something that is expected in your environment from two domain controllers. Now all of a sudden, this SolarWinds server is syncing with this Windows, and this, by the way, you see the crown. This is a domain controller, so a high valuable device in your environment. It should not do that. The SolarWinds server should not sync with this domain controller because that's normal. And you see that here, the expected value from a machine learning point of view is 0. We never saw that before. In 5 minutes, it's tried to do that 123 times. That's not only strange behavior, it's strange behavior that can be tied to malicious activity. This is why this detection hits, right? Because it's not only strange, it can be tied to something malicious. So what this SolarWinds server is trying to do is get hashes from for all the usernames, and so all the users in your environment, to try to get the password. You can do that, try to do that offline to get to the passwords. But actually, he's also doing something else. Because the next step it does is a Gerber's golden ticket attack. Now, this is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to your organization. Because what the hacker is now doing is trying to get a ticket, what they call a golden ticket, off the domain controller, which means carte blanche. You can do anything. It doesn't matter what username you have. The rights that you have are elevated to unlimited. There's nothing that is stopping you now. So here you see the Gerber's golden ticket attack. And again, we if you don't know how this works, here are the records that it sent. We show you the MITRE ATT&CK techniques that are tied to the risk factors, the attack background, mitigation options, references. This is bad stuff. If this happens in your environment, you really have an issue, because now the hacker really doesn't have any limitations. And as you can see here, it's now doing lateral movement. We detect it again because the SolarWinds server never did this before, right? We now see in 5 minutes, a peak value of 2, and we see that it's scheduling tasks on these two services. It can be that it's now scheduling some sort of command and control session to keep, even though this SolarWinds server is taken offline, it still has connection to these domain controllers. It can be anything, right? It can be anything that you really don't want in your environment. Now, again, You see SMB data staging, and one of the cool things about this is because we see what's happening here, and we can decrypt SMB traffic if you want. And the whole point here is that it's now accessing files, right? So here you see us auto-populating what kind of users are tied to this, what are kind of files, and the reason why this is so bad is because it's now accessing a email .pst. Sorry, that's some Dutch in between. But it's really the backup file for your email. You know, a lot of privacy sensitive, corporate sensitive data. Okay, not good, right? So the last part, the data exfiltration. So it really, works a little bit the same as the ransomware. It's just getting in and getting to the goal. It's a different way to get to the goal eventually, but it's all about exfiltrating the data. In this case, we see 3.2 gigabits of data. Now, again, as you can see here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, it's a encrypted connection. We're not able to see inside of it. We see that there's a lot of data being exfiltrated, but the whole point is you never want to get to this point. The point of this is that you want to detect this in the early stages, so it never gets to this point here. Because here again, you're too late. You've been compromised. The hacker now has your information. You're too late. So this is what we have when it comes to detections. We actually have, I will show you one more, also threat briefing inside of here. So with this camera here, you see for this detection, we have an IP address that is already known, for being malicious on the internet. It's on the IP malware list. But so there's also threat intelligence here that tells you that certain IP addresses are already known for doing malicious things. You can also use your own threat intelligence. So if you have a threat intelligence from another vendor, as long as it's sticks format, you can import that. You can import several sticks format files, and we can all use those to do analysis on IP addresses. Now, the last part that I wanted to show you are the dashboards. The reason I wanted to show you that is, one, there's some really interesting information in here, and two, these dashboards can be customized, so you can get all the information you actually want, and we have a lot of data in here. The security dashboard is in here by default, but you can download bundles where you can have visibility on what kind of SMB traffic you have, what kind of SMB versions, all these kind of things. One of the things is weak ciphers. Now, getting to weak ciphers, and weak ciphers really mean the data integrity. So if you encrypt data, the integrity of the data is really not that well, because they found ways to compromise it, to actually be able to see the data again. And these are the weak ciphers that are being used. Now, normally, if you want to see that, you need to go to the server, analyze, go into the application, see what kind of, ciphers they're using. By just looking at the wire data, we can see that. So we now have a visibility of what the weak ciphers are. You might say that, oh, that's nice, but actually that doesn't help me because I still need to fix it. How do I do that? Well, here you see the amount of weak ciphers. If you click on it, and I need to click right here. If you click on it, actually you can go to the servers. Zoom out a little bit. And now I have a complete list of all the servers that are using weak ciphers. So this helps you to elevate your security to a higher level. The same goes for information on, scroll down a little bit, when it comes to certificates. So we're able to see expired certificates. We're able to see self-signed certificates. Again, all clickable. So you can get information which, what is using these the expired certificates. We can see wildcard certificates. I had a question from somebody once that said, Eric, we don't know where our wildcards are installed. Are you able to help? Yes, we can see that. Again, clickable. We can go to this data and analyze what servers are using these wildcards. I also have a list of expiring and expired certificates. So if I click on here, show me more, it gives me a complete list from old to new of all the certificates in this environment. So I can scroll down and, well, you understand what I mean, right? So we have 21/12, so that means December, but I can really see when are my certificates going to expire. Another thing, and just bear with me for a moment, you can create a dashboard for this, but I don't have that in this demo environment. I do have that when you want to run a POV with us, but I can install these bundles, and they can also be downloaded from our website. But if you look at this, right, this is some of the metrics. When I now click on SSL, I can get an overview of, look here, exactly which TLS versions are being used. So now you have the ability to, and again, this is clickable, so see what servers are using TLS 1.0, which ones are using TLS 1.1. Again, this is not an attack, right? There's nothing to do with a hacker, getting into your environment. This is all about security hygiene, elevating your security to a high level so you're not vulnerable to a lot of things. Now, when we're talking about vulnerable, let me show you LDAP. LDAP is a common use protocol to authenticate devices, users, or whatever you want. So again, a lot of metrics, but what I want to show you is in the bottom here. I'll zoom in again. Now we see that we have secure LDAP here, which is great, means encrypted. But unfortunately, we also have plain text LDAP. And I have to say that during POVs I'm running, I see a lot of this happening. Plain text LDAP. And the reason is, is excuse me, sometimes a little bit hard for administrators to configure secure LDAP. So they choose to, maybe for a test, to do it with plain text LDAP, but then they forget to change it to secure LDAP. Sometimes it is, an LDAP connection towards a AAA server, an authentication server, meaning usernames and passwords are sent in clear text over the wire. If a hacker gets access to that, again, it's carte blanche. If there's also administrator accounts going over it, this person can now do everything. It has access, or at least has some username and password it can try to misuse. The whole point is you're able to understand your environment. You're able to look at what do I need to change in my environment to be less vulnerable. That's the whole point here. We also have our overview page, which is really useful when it comes to your perimeter. Again, here you see from our threat intelligence, suspicious inbound and outbound connections. I can click on it. Actually, I can show you that. We can directly go to what IP addresses are being used in this case that are malicious in the sense that they're known from a threat intelligence. We can see all the cloud services that are being used. And this is really useful when you have geo-blocking on your firewall. I can also check if your firewall, the geo-blocking it's using, is working. Because, and wait until it loads. Here we go. Yeah. So here I can see all the countries, right? So let's say I'm not expecting something from Hong Kong or Vietnam. I know, it can tighten my filter on the firewall to not accept these connections. Or maybe you do want to accept them. It's just giving you the visibility. Even though we look at the east-west corridor, so all the traffic between your servers, between your clients and your servers, because we're not focusing on the north-south traffic that much, we really want to see what's happening inside of the environment. We still can see when a client or a server is connecting to the internet. This is what we show you here. We can also show you large uploads, especially when it's red, to a suspicious IP address. Yeah, you want to be a little bit cautious here because that's not good. So this is really what I wanted to show you. I don't know if there's any questions until now. Gives me a moment to sip something on the thing. Yeah. Was there any question coming in?
Yes, we have one question. So I ask you. Let's say attacker gives ransomware for the user that has no admin rights. Is he still able to get SSH keys and data and etc.?
So if the user doesn't have any rights, that it's going to be more difficult to do anything. And keep in mind, the ransomware doesn't start with encrypting files, right? It's the hacker getting access and trying to move into your environment to get to the point that it knows where a file needs to be encrypted, or get to and exfiltrate the data. So it has access to a user that doesn't have any rights. The next thing it will start to do is try to see if it can elevate that, right? What I showed you with the DC sync, these are things with mini-gets that they, start using to actually try to get to a point that they do have the rights. It is all about they're in your environment. And you really want to see what's happening, what they're trying to do to elevate the rights, to say, hey, this device or this user has been compromised. We need to take that all offline, that device by, we can integrate with a EDR agent saying, quarantine this device until we fixed it. The whole point is you want to identify it and resolve it. But I totally agree. If he doesn't have the rights, it's going to be hard for a hacker to do anything. But at a certain point, he's going to find a way. He's in your environment, so he's doing that high five, going, yeah, I'm here, right? He's just going to take his time. And keep in mind, hackers most of the time have a lot of time, more time than you and me, right? We're busy all the time. We don't have time to do these kind of things. They have a lot of time most of the time. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Alex, is it a good answer for you, or you just want to?
Thanks.
Okay,
Cool.
yeah,
Good.
it's okay.
Any other questions?
So please ask us.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
While you're thinking and preparing your question, I will ask. Now I see a lot of buzz on the internet about this XDR or extended.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit about this topic? Yeah. Is your software old school, or XDR is
really good
the
question.
better thing, or how it's look now from your point of view?
So you see a lot of these things, right? You see XDR, I have seen IDR, I see MDR. The thing is, MDR itself is a category that is invented by Gartner. It's not a defined term of NDR needs to do this. So there's also marketing companies that says, well, we don't have NDR, but we want to look sexy, so we say that we do XDR. I'm not saying it's bad, right? So that's not what I'm trying to say. It's just another marketing term. And XDR really means extended, right? So you have some firewall vendors that say, well, we look at a firewall and we install some agent on an endpoint, we get some logs from there, and that is what we call XDR, because we're now doing more than we did before. Our solution, when you look at what we do, and we integrate with an EDR agent, we integrate with SIEM. This is also what you can call XDR. The problem is XDR is not a defined term. Anybody can say that they're doing XDR. It's not, you cannot go on Wikipedia and say, or maybe you can, maybe somebody tried to define it, but it's not a standard. Anybody can say that they're doing XDR. IDR, I've heard as well, incident detection and response. Okay, MDR, this is something Bluebridge is doing. It's called managed detection and response. It's just saying, most companies don't have the time or the people to actually look at all these detections, so they just say, let us handle that. It's the managed detection and response, and in their background, they're using MDR, SIEM, and EDR to help you guys out to actually prevent you from being hacked. But just know that all these terms, they're so confusing. I can imagine for a customer, do we need to have NDR, XDR, IDR, MDR? What the hell am I supposed to choose? Look at what it does and decide on that part. I showed you that Gartner says logging from SIEM, EDR, the endpoint protection, and NDR, these three things is really the SOC visibility triad that's going to help you out get that visibility. If you, again, do XDR and it's only based on logs, that's not really that SOC visibility triad. That's just only really SIEM. And my feeling is having a combination of EDR and NDR is really where the power lies. not only in C.
Okay, thank you. We have one more.
Yeah.
Do you use macOS to manage servers, users, networks, and etc.?
Well, I'm using macOS, but and that, by the way, is a choice of ExtraHop, because we're based in Seattle and Microsoft is also based there, and our founders were really pissed off at a certain point because they were stealing all our colleagues, right? So they said we're going to do macOS because we're fed up with Microsoft. No, we really have a good relationship with Microsoft now, but so macOS is, I mean, it doesn't really matter what kind of devices you use. The reason why it doesn't matter is because from a network perspective, it is just, again, an endpoint. So if it's a Mac, if it's a Windows device, if it's a Linux device, if it's an IoT device with some sort of Linux kernel, we look at the network data. So we look at it from what is the device doing, looking at behavior. Myself, I use macOS by choice of the customer, my company. For me, it really doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see more questions. Maybe the last one from me. Now, a lot of our environment is in, VMware.
Yeah.
So can you also investigate VM traffic, and even we're using Docker containers with NDR, or we need some other solutions?
Yeah. Good question. I think I forgot to tell that. So when you look at network traffic, right, you normally think you get the network traffic from a core switch, for instance, where you get a spam port. But one of the things you can also do, and it's a functionality of VMware, or if VMware has something they call ER-span, where it's sort of a GRE tunnel, but we can say, I just want to copy all the network traffic from within VMware and send it to our appliance. And our appliance can be a physical appliance, but it can also be a virtual appliance within VMware. So we don't just get a copy of that network traffic and see all the server activity within VMware. And we can also look at inter-Docker communication. That's also a way of, and we have ways to do that. We just know that is also possible. It is all about getting that visibility within these kind of environments. The same goes for cloud, where we use a virtual tab to see all the server activity within your cloud, or from your cloud to your in your hybrid environment. So first of all, I just want to, before we end, thank everybody for your time watching. If there's any questions, please direct them to Blue Ridge or direct it to me. Hope this was useful.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Very useful and very interesting presentation, especially demo part.